Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the way that Liz Truss is setting herself up for a course that will wreck prospects of an economic recovery as badly as some in her party fear. And this isn't based on my left-wing view of economics, it's based on something Truss has said. She intends to carry out her economic policies without referring to economic impact assessments in advance. This is flying blind in the most reckless way imaginable. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, when a government adopts a policy that may have some impact on the economy, and most do, they run an economic impact assessment. There's only one economic policy that the government have ever gone ahead with where this was not done, as far as I can tell, and that is Brexit. And it was a big one. The government deliberately told officials not to run economic impact assessments of their Brexit plans because they knew what they would say. And there was no way they could justify their plans to Parliament. Independent assessments all pointed to the loss of productivity and rising inflation, which we're now seeing. But the government can dismiss independent assessments. Oh, our own data doesn't show that. What does your data show? Oh, we haven't got any because we told them not to get any. You know, even when these independent assessments are in agreement and even when they're borne out, they can still deny them. Such is the failure of our media to do its job. We're seeing the same thing again from Liz Truss. The Office for Budgetary Responsibility has said that it's totally ready to provide the new Prime Minister with forecasts to model the impact of economic policies, but Truss has said that she's going to do without them. She's insisting on tax cuts that even Tories know is going to work against efforts to grow the economy. As people keep pointing out, where tax cuts do anything at all to stimulate the economy, it is in the form of creating more demand. Demand is not our problem. What we have is a severe supply problem. People keep trying to shout it louder and louder because Truss obviously isn't listening. If you create more demand, when your problem is supply, you are just going to drive inflation higher. And speaking of inflation, the front pages of some of today's newspapers are really laying it on thick. The suggestion from the Bank of England now is that inflation will hit 18%. And this is, I mean, think how rapid this was. Inflation was going to be like 9% or 10%. It's gone past 10% now. A couple of weeks ago, Bank of England saying it was going to hit 13%. Now they're talking about 18.6%. The Daily Express says this will be the highest since 1976. Now, getting ready for the next election, I've actually been starting to sort out economic analyses, which I'm going to be using at the time of the election. It's going to take me a while, so long run up at it. But basically, it's quite hard to get all the data you want. So I approached the Office for National Statistics, contacted them. They've been immensely helpful in gathering together the data I needed. Bottom line is, inflation on the measure they used technically was above 18% in 1980, but the measure used was not considered to be the best way to gauge inflation. So the method they now use, CPI, produces lower inflation figures. So this 18.6% would actually be greater than it was at the end of the 70s. We had an oil crisis hit at the end of the 70s. Inflation shot up. This is going to be worse. This is really bad. And for those who are trying to claim, oh, inflation's rising everywhere, it's way worse here than comparable economies. And again, for those people, a small economy on the edge of a war driven by a military superpower is not a comparable country. We compare ourselves with the G7. And the reason for the ever-rising inflation forecast is gas prices. So we're not talking about commodities that are non-essential. What's driving inflation are the essentials that people on the lowest incomes or any income simply cannot do without. Or at least the vast majority of us who don't live in the wilderness living off the land. Now, back to Truss. Incredibly reckless and the furthest thing from patriotic to risk the economy by pursuing policies based on political ideology without reference to modelling the impact. Policies must always be driven by data and analysis if you are to do the best for people in the country, no matter what your political outlook. Because if your political outlook is robust, if you really believe in it, you will submit it to criticism, to analysis. But to adopt this position at a time when we're heading into a recession and inflation is spiralling out of control is insane. Actually, worse than that, it just shows how little regard Truss has for the country or its people. This is going to crush millions, maybe even tens of millions. It is why a core of influential Tory MPs are refusing to calm down their attacks on Truss. Sunak, Raab and Gove, chief amongst them, all remaining vocally opposed to Liz Truss's economic plans. Yes, there's been quite a bit of mudslinging in this leadership contest, but the contest is basically over, unless something quite spectacular happens. Most MPs have publicly backed Truss now. They've seen the way it's going. They want a job. You know, some vocal Sunak supporters have switched. You know, they want a job in the new government. So they're backing Truss. They know that the race is over. But there are a handful that are just so convinced that Truss is going to destroy the party's reputation that they cannot go along with it. Because that's what they really fear, by the way. It's not the economy. They all backed Brexit. They all sacrificed the economy. But that was different because they thought they'd get away with it. They don't believe they're going to get away with this one. I've said before, Truss is going to have to shift her position once she becomes Prime Minister. That she's adopting the rhetoric she is now to appeal to party members. Once she's been made Prime Minister, it's not party members she needs to appeal to, but normal vote, those target voters, those 1% of target voters. She has to focus on those. And they've got very different ideas. In fact, one of the mad ideas that normal voters have is that they should be able to have electricity, food and a roof over their heads. But this task is made more difficult if the economic situation worsens. The situation is that Liz Truss is promising things that aren't really in line with helping people deal with the cost of living crisis. But the higher the cost of essentials goes up, the more government intervention is needed. The more government intervention there is, the more out of kilter Truss's position will be compared with what she's saying to party members now. She'll have to tilt towards ordinary voters, but she can't afford much movement because she's adopted such a strong right-wing position to become leader. It's not just party members she'll be pissing off, but the far-right MP she's built her support on Parliament with. But the problem is, Labour have published a plan that the normal voters agree with, even Tory voters agree with. So she'll also, Labour will be aligning with what the public want. She will be shifting herself very far from what the public want. That's not going to win her the next election. So now I'm wondering if she intends to tilt to voters at all. Declining economic impact assessments can only have the same reasoning as declining them for Brexit plans. She knows her plans are going to destroy the economy, doesn't want to provide ammunition for people who'd quite like our economy to grow again. And if she intended to soften her stance now, economic impact reports would give her the tools to argue the case. Doing without them just seems to me a very blinkered approach. Labour strategists are reported to be saying that when Liz Truss is made Prime Minister, they won't be able to land any blows on her to begin with. This is what I've also been saying. The public are going to give her a chance. There's no, all Keir Starmer, everyone's going to lose their shit because they'll get a bounce back in the polls and it'll look like Starmer. Why isn't Starmer landing any blows? What's going on? Oh, he's useless. No, he'll just be setting his traps. There are no blows to land on her until she's had chance to implement something. But what Labour strategists are also noting is that when they poll people, they find that Truss is more popular with people who don't know anything about her. They find that the more people know Truss, the less they like her. So they are confident that after 3 months of anti-Tories losing their minds, more of the public will see her for who she is, and then they can start landing their blows. If Truss is serious about the insane approach to economic policy in the middle of some serious stagflation, I'm not even sure I'd give her 3 months. Right now, I'm working on the assumption she is going to fiddle something to calm the short-term pressure over energy bills this autumn. I simply can't let my brain accept the possibility that she doesn't. Although she is talking about more support for the very vulnerable, this targeted support, okay, that's not going to help her. Economically, it won't help because it's too limited, so it won't cool inflation down. Politically, it won't help because if she does genuinely provide more support for the most vulnerable, okay, that's great from a government point of view. I'm not going to knock that. But those most vulnerable people tend not to vote at all. And when they do, only the loopiest of them vote Tory. So it doesn't help her politically. This move by Truss really has got me worried for the country. But it has got me emboldened politically. She didn't have to say she'd ignore economic forecasts. Why would she? She says that her plans would grow the economy. Well, if that's true, and Tory party members believe it. Why dismiss economic reports? Why doesn't she? Oh, great, brilliant. Yes, I'll absolutely want your economic impact reports. They will prove that my economic plans are going to be robust. Because they won't produce those reports until after she's safely in government anyway. Until she actually puts forward a policy. Because at the moment, she's just producing sound bites. There's no published policy. This statement of hers isn't intended to help her with the leadership contest. It can't. It doesn't serve that purpose. If she said it, it sounds to me like she might actually be serious about pursuing economic policies that she knows are rubbish. Because that's the distinction. Not just ones that are rubbish. She knows are rubbish. If she believed in them and she was just wrong, she'd still welcome the economic impact reports. And then when she got them, think, well, that's not right. As we head into a lengthy recession and with inflation levels higher than at any time in my adult life, that's what they're going to be, the latest is that we're going to see the energy price cap going up by 75% compared to now, but it'll be nearly treble compared to a year ago. And it's still expected to rise further in the new year as well. This is going to destroy people's lives. But it will also finish the Tories off come the next election. Which is why I still find it hard to believe that Truss is serious about this. Unless she fancies being Prime Minister for just a couple of years and then retiring after a legacy of serious civil unrest, major industrial strikes, knackered economy. If that's what she wants, 2 years of presiding over that, just so she can say she was Prime Minister. Otherwise, I just can't see her strategy here. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.